The shail is Venigleh Kvod Havai v'ro kol bosa yachtov. So Mashiach will come, v'ro kol bosa, the flesh will see. So the question is, it should have said that even the flesh should see. Who sees Elikus is the neshama. Even the Nefesh Bahamis can grasp Elikus. That's the Iker. But this Hasoga will come, this grasp will also embrace the body. So it should have been a filu kol basa. Whereas the Pasuk seems to imply that the Iker Gilui will be to the Basar Aguf Kashmi. Now to understand what that means, he brought the Pasuk, Kei Omar Havaya, Beide HaShamayim, Yoitzer Haaretz V'Oisa, he formed the world and made it. Lo Yisayu Bara, didn't create it that it should be desolate. L'Sheves Yitzhara, he formed it that it should be cultivated, settled. And the Havaya V'Ein Oid. So the Rebbe Marash addresses the Pasuk. The Rebbe explains the Shaila in the Pasuk that he needs to explain. Actually, two Shailas. Why Yoitzer Haaretz, he formed. It's just simply he made the world, and likewise, not L'Sheves Yitzhara, L'Sheves Oisa. Why invoke the notion of Yitzhira and not Asiyah? And secondly, what's the connection to the end of the pasuk? Ani Havaya V'Ein Oid. The answer is why the union of Yitzhira and not Asiyah? Because the kavan of Dirib Tachtonim is that Ani Havaya V'Ein Oid, which at the simple meaning is just a separate statement at the end. And now he explains it to mean that's the hemshech to the words L'Sheves Yitzhara. What is it that we are to cause to dwell in the world, to cultivate the world, to settle the world, with Ani Havaya V'Ein Oid? That's already answers why that's stated at the end of the pasuk, because that is what the L'Sheves Yitzhara is. Furthermore, this now explains why the union of Yitzhira, because Yitzhira means to connect two things. You form something, he says it's tying together and binding together. And that's the kavanah. If the pasuk would say he made it, it's not conveying the kavanah. By saying he formed it, it's hinting to the kavanah, which is to connect two things, Elikus in the world. She started this whole beer in the chiddush of this hiskashus, because Eir and Keli are opposites. They're drawn in opposite direction. Eir is drawn upwards and Keli is drawn downwards. And therefore the avodah is required
Bless you, Rabbi.
And therefore the avodah is required to connect the two. And this begins, he says, this whole avodah of the Kisha, the Eris and Kalim, starts already with the guf and the nefesh. And in the nefesh itself, the nefesh alikis and nefesh abamas, which are opposites. Nonetheless, they bond. So Hashem created man to begin with already with this fusion as the template for the whole purpose, which is then further realized in actuality through Torah and mitzvahs. As the pasuk says, "Anochi asisi eretz v'odam alei barasi." It's not two separate things. I made the world and I created the person. The pasuk is saying, I made the world for the person. And what's the purpose of the person? It's hinted in the word barasi, begimatria taryag. That through Torah and mitzvahs, we make the world dira yizbarach. So explains in the Maamar, this is all yesterday, this is all based on the Maamar of the Rabbi Marash. Based on the Maamar that how do you have the kishur of two opposite things? The kelim have to be broad and not narrow. And the mashal is a child as opposed to a mature person. I'm not saying an older person because many older people are children. What's the definition of a child? The definition of a child in many ways, but one is that the child cannot tolerate something, opposite things at once. If he's angry, he's angry. He can't at the same time understand that even someone you're upset with, that you have to do a chesed with. But someone is mature, he can. That's because of what? Because of the broadness of the keli. Now, now what we're up to. So the Marash brings this marshal, but then asks. It's the second ois by the number 12. The ha'od is number 12. Right after that. Everybody has it, yeah? Makshal's Sharecha v'kelim eine elatam l'sibas hasavlonus. So that which we said now, that the broad keli. So all that can do is induce tolerance. That the keli can tolerate two opposites. Here's a person, an example of the person that has hurt you, that you're upset with, disappointed in, enemy, even. In the same time, because of the cheshbon, you have to do the person the chesed. So it's tolerance. We're not talking tolerance. The kavod of the bria is not to tolerate that creation should tolerate the likus. They should coexist in a cold peace. That's not the kavod. But the kavod is not, again, tolerance, but that they unite and bond. How can two opposite things become one? This is the Shaili asked Ibn Marash in his explanation of the kavana of Yotzei Haaretz and Lasheves Yitzorah. But how does it happen? He brings it, explains it in light of the teaching of the Maggid. The Pirush Droshes Chazal, he explains that Droshes Chazal ala posach Eiseh Shalom b'Ibrahima. He makes peace on high. So says the Medrash. What's the peace on high? The Eibishter makes Michal Sar Shel Sheleg and Gavriel Sar Shel Eish. So Michael is the minister, the prince of snow, and Gavriel of fire. Sar, the minister, another word for it. They don't extinguish each other. That's what it says in Medrash. So explains the Maggid. Oh, so there's a third Indian here. This is the Chiddush. There's a Giloy that is higher than both of them. And that can engender such the unity we seek. This is part of the Maggid. Two ministers in the cabinet, that they're in opposition. In fact, they were chosen by the king precisely because they're in opposition, because he wants to have different perspectives. And yet, in the presence of the king, is battling mitziusa. They are in this battle from their mitzius, from their identity, and they speak as one being in echad, in one subject, as if they were never in opposition. The king has spoken, and now they're discussing it, and they're discussing it in absolute unity. There's even gam can be in the areas of Kalim. Likewise, the Chibar and Iris and Kalim, Shima Yosem, Afchim, Zem is even though they are the opposite, Gvul and Bligvul, drawn upwards histalkos is the nature of Eir, the nature of and it's just projected, but its nature is histalkos, to diffuse, expand. The nature of the keli is to contain. So even though they're opposite, so when there's a gilui that is both higher than the Eir and keli, then the limitations and this battle only become one. So the chod we would have appeared to have answered how this is achieved. Not so. That even his explanation is insufficient. What is the gilui do? What is being in the presence of the king effect? They forget to transcend their mitzias. So when they surrender to that which is higher, they don't oppose each other. But they don't become one. We still don't understand. I think this is the Rebbe's question. I don't think this is the question of the Rebbe Marash. Need to look it up. How is it possible that two fuse in such a way they should affect, not just surrender? So we're silent. We'll repeat what the king says. But they should affect inyan echad v'kavana achas. In other words, there should be mitzad den mitzias. Bittul mitzias, good. That could happen. Surrender. But to engage mitzias and have this unity when you're opposites, how is that possible? Actually, but it's not enough that they and his battle and they're not in opposition. Okay, now, as we said before, that this is the kavanah, however. It is v'kelim, they're binding together. He has chala. This is the beginning. Shadeze and Ishlemes HaKavana, the did betachtoin. It all starts with Eres and Kelim L'mayla. How could that even happen? How does it happen? How is it possible? Ois Gimel. So it doesn't appear. There's no source. But this is the Rebbe Shai. You understand this by understanding the way the body and the nefesh will be one when Mashiach comes. We're talking in by Tchiyas Sameis. Then will be the shleimus of the schar for avoid of the mitzvahs noisev aschar the Gan Eden. In addition to the schar Gan Eden, the neshama receives after 120 years here, but the shleimus of the schar is dafke by Tchiyas Sameis. Elsewhere in Chassidus it says that the ikar schar in Gan Eden is for limud Torah. It's understood because Gan Eden is Eilam Ruchni. And the avoided that the person did over here, the ruchni is the avoid, the limud, havana, vasok, what's Gan Eden? Understanding, grasping, is a result, midah keneged midah of his Torah or his kavana in this world. Whereas the Maisa HaMitzvah is vika deikascha is Tchiyas Sameis. What? Is he going to mention why he's bringing the kishur from Tchiyas? Why what? Why is he bringing from kishur of Tchiyas and not from like now? Because understand it. But understand, because now it's like he will explain. Now we don't have a havana of a kishur of Eres of Kelim of the nefesh in the body. It's dafka lasadava. And it's all to understand, but all how the gashmi is, how the bossa, that's the ikir gilev of the kusas in the bossa. It's all to explain. So just explaining why the shleimus haschar is in the Eilam Atchiyah. Because then the guf is also present, and therefore that's the schar for the Maisa mitzvah. When you learn, you're learning with your nefesh more. Kavanas with your nefesh. When you do a mitzvah, that engages the guf. So the shleimus haschar, which the guf took part in, which is the Maisa mitzvah, is Tchiyas Sameis when the guf is resurrected. Now, So there is, with respect to Tchias HaMeisim, we're not Gan Eden. Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik Elam Haba is not talking about Gan Eden. Now those that don't merit Gan Eden. But Kol Yisrael is Tchias HaMeisim. Why? Because every year did a mitzvah, did something. It's not possible not to do something. It is possible to be in the world and not never to learn Torah, not to engage in anything ruchnis. So there can be no schar in Gan Eden. But Maisa Be'Poel is not possible not. Everybody has a chelik in the world to come. The Tchias HaMeisim, this refers to Tchias HaMeisim. How do we say that from the Mishnah? Because Elam Haba can be understood as being as one or the other. It could be the world to come that you meet after death, which is Gan Eden, or it can mean Tchias HaMeisim. Here, it means Tchias HaMeisim. We can see this from the Mishnah itself. Of Kol Yisrael, because the Mucha Behem should live in Mishnah, as the Mishnah goes on to say, because it goes on to say as follows, quote, and the following don't have a chelik. Ain't Tchias HaMeisim in Torah. If someone says there's no Tchias HaMeisim, doesn't believe in it. Even then, the Mefarshim say eventually he'll be zeicher to it, but not initially. But Ravu beGemara Tam Adova, so why is he not being zeicher to Tchias HaMeisim? Who kafa b'Tchias HaMeisim? He denied it. Therefore, he has no share in it. God's responses are midah keneged midah. So what's going to be there in close brackets? So that's going to be the schar and the neshamas in gufim. What's our question? The question became stronger by also bringing the Zohar. The Zohar said that everybody has chulka b'almadas. So it's have to understand. Everybody has a chelik nelam haba. Chelik, what's chelik daike? Everybody be present, will be there. Chelik horoiva and halacha, when you say a part, that means a quarter. A defined piece. If a person says such and such a person should take a part of my estate, what is he given? This is in his will. He's given a quarter. That's what a part means. So it's very defined. Everybody gets a quarter. What does this mean? Not only, that's two questions really. What does it mean a chelik? And chelik itself, it's a quarter. What does it mean a quarter in Ilmab? Having zeh to understand this, the goof and how will the body and the soul be one in Elam Hatchiyah? It's not the same as today. Not the way it is currently. This is food and drink. But not then. Elam Haza is unlike Elam Haba. There's no food, there's no drink, etc. The tzaddikim sit and with a crown and so on. And they derive pleasure from the rays of the divine presence. In the Rambam Befarish, now Taka the Rambam says, they best address the Rambam. We just finished saying it's referring to Elam Hatchiyah. The Rambam says otherwise. Befarish of Maimar Azal Zeh Koil Alilim Neshamas. That's talking about the world of Neshamas B'lei Gufim. Moreover, the Rambam states that that's the Tachlis. Tachlis is the Neshamas B'lei Gufim. But interestingly enough, the Ramban responded and rejected this view, and Chassidus adopts the Ramban because he's the latter position. And he says, no, Shim Kedvar of Keinhu, if, it's like the Rambam says, so what's the Gemara have to tell us? The Gemara has to tell us that if the world is referring to neshamas only, do we have to say that it's not going to be achil or shtir? 'Cause Is it possible that a disembodied neshama should have food and drink? Of course not. It doesn't have to be stated. So when it says ein belechilur siyah, it's mean that even though there's a guf, that's the chiddush. There's no guf, there's no chiddush in the statement. So he's mechiyach from the Gemara, but also mechiyach Chassidus adds.
He's also changing what Olam Haba is.
What?
He's also changing what Olam Haba is.
Yes.
How do we know that he's not talking about?
How do you know what?
Here, by saying that the Rambam is touching Olam Haba, Tchilat HaMitzvah. That's right.
Pardon?
Is that correct?
Yeah.
But maybe the Rambam is not talking about Tchilat HaMitzvah.
So yeah, so there is such an answer, but I think it's explicit in the Rambam. You have to look at that the tachlis, the end of the game, is elam ruchni. It's pretty clear that he says that. So the Rebbe, the obvious question, Tchias HaMeisim is the Gimel Ikrim, what the Rambam himself says. Right. So how does it fit in? There's all kinds of beauty happens before and it's temporary. It happens, but it's temporary. But then the tachlis is an neshamas bali gufin. It's only a temporary thing. And this statement, the Olam Haba, is going on the tachlis. Tchias HaMeisim happened, done. Says the Ramban, no, this is the tachlis, and it must be with the guf, because otherwise, what's the chiddush? Now the masik shekoy al zman the Tchias HaMeisim sheyeh Admo guf. It's talking about Tchias HaMeisim when the Admo being a guf. And nonetheless, now we're explaining now, ein beloy achilas. It's all getting us closer to Varoko Basar. That there be a guf, but he doesn't eat. And he concludes, and this is the final ruling, the final decision of the Chachmei Emes, which is a term referring to the Mukabolim, the Kabbalah v'Chassidus, like the Ramban, that the Tachlis is the Shamas Begufim, and that's the final Ilam Haba, the final destination. V'hainu Shabelam, another temporary thing. V'hainu Shabelam Atchi, Slabshan, the Shamas Begufim Gashmir, and the Ilam Atchi, and the Neshamas are being clothed in physical bodies, Kameshayat Belam Haza, as they were in this world. Yafa Pekin, and nonetheless, they won't be nourished from food and drink. The body, and what does that mean? That the Guf HaGashmi is nourished from the Ziv HaShchina. And that's the next question. How can a body exist without food and drink? But nourished physically from the Ziv HaShchina. Explaining the question. The very mitzias, the very being of the body is a descent relative to the neshama. And therefore, the neshama is in the guf, it conceals it and prevents the neshama from grasping huselikus. We talk about godliness, but we cannot see it. And we have a neshama. Why? Because of the guf. What is the guf in the way of the neshama? That he went up with his body in a storm heavenward, right? So first of all, it's explained how is that possible? His guf ascends to Ilam HaRuchni. So it's explaining Chassidus and Kabbalah. I don't think it's in any other source, but it's in Chassidus, Mistam and Kabbalah. He wasn't just as an embryo, was in gestation 12 months. So his body was so translucent and refined that the body could ascend heavenwards. And the reason Gemara is that the Gemara discusses that a child could be in 12 months in the womb and it continues to complete its. So we see the l'chura that the guf, if it's very refined, yes, can ascend to the heavenly realms. He says no. He only ascended to the level of ruach. That's as far as the guf can go. It's to the world of yitzira, or the level of ruach of the parallel level of ruach of neshama, nefesh, ruach, neshama. But not even to the level of neshama of the neshama. And we're talking lasid love when what? When the guf is then in beziv hashchina, the highest dargis, not just in the yitzira. In fact, higher than ishtalshalis. Moreover, what about Moishe Rabbeinu? Moishe Rabbeinu was in the mountain for 40 days, completely ruchnistic. And even Moishe Rabbeinu, we're talking about the Torah, the greatest Giluyim, more than Elam HaYitzirah, and he was there with a guf. So this is a bigger kasha. And he was nourished, but he was nourished, he existed. So there too, it's not the same meaning as lost love. Why not?
He was a premature.
What?
He was a preview.
And he was a preview 7 months, yeah. So in the Afshar, your guf is some Moishe guf kodesh, even though he talked about a holy guf, Commissioner Kotzavatera, his mother saw that he was good. What does it mean? You see, he's good. Every child is good. Because when he was born, the house is filled with light. And that's number one. And the ascending was through an empowerment, a commandment and empowerment from above. And the pasuk says, Hashem said to Moishe, send to God. So l'chura here we have, he has a refined body, there's a tzivoy. No, that's how the guf can what? Nen meziv hashchina. But it's not so. And it's not the parallel to losid lovely. Because in addition to the fact that he suffered, he was in pain. That's why he was zoicha to all the giluyim about Torah. All the giluyim of the medrash and all of the deeper, the extra additional in yonim of Torah Shabbal Peh. The Eibishter gave Moishe dafke by the luchas shniyas because it's tired that he didn't eat and drink. So we see that it's not that the guf wasn't this, and it wasn't that. In fact, Mefarshim explained it was in this meditative state. The body was in a kind of a comatose state, or whatever the biyurim are, but it did not engage the guf. It's not the pshat that the guf was satiated. Ziv hashchina, it's tired. Moreover, Isa b'svarim, aside from that, in the svarim, what's svarim? Rabbi Marash, it's interesting. What's svarim? They also, in Ilah 32, they also say Isa b'svarim. We don't have a source, I don't think. This isn't svarim. That he parked his body in the Ilam HaYitzirah, whatever that means. So we see the end of the day that the mitzias of the guf, even the guf of Moishe Rabbeinu, prevents Kabbalah Satayra. He had to divest himself from. So making the question stronger, what does it mean? The lasid lava will be nizim. The guf is nizim meziv hashchina. Continuing further in the question, we understand this from Gan Eden. Neshamas b'lei gufim dafke. That Gan Eden is for neshamas without gufim dafke. Shezeh mitzad oitza ma'alis hagili the Gan Eden. What the Eibush doesn't mind, let the guf come along. What's the terrible? Can't, won't get anything. We said, Oitzim Mailis Agilui, the Gan Eden Sheni Yochel Lisba Metzia Shel Guf Gashmi, Gan Eden cannot tolerate a Guf Gashmi. Afilu Lache Shul Acher Amiru Biru V'Zichuch, even after the body has been refined and purified. No, that what?
That at the end of the day, the fire can't, like, no matter how refined or whatever, they're just opposite. The body can't, no matter how refined it is, be in a state of spirituality.
And yet, Eimachad says that.
That probably.
But they're Gufim Ruchnim. They're Gufim Ruchnim. That's a Shakash.
No, I'm saying the Kiddush of the third level, that's going to be the Tchiyat.
Yeah, it's similar to the Kiddush of Gabriel and Michal. Yeah, similar, but you have to understand. The Shkoyach Chesed Hayam, but the Neshama has to go through the Nahar Dinur, right? This river of fire to forget the whole imagery of Elam Hazeh, that it attached itself even to the Neshama. Now, even if the guf goes through this bir and zichuch, that the guf will forget chesed. This is interesting. The guf will, to look up the Zohar there, will forget chesed alma in a gamoze in a Gan Eden yochel l'seiv. Even after the guf has gone through a bir, even then Gan Eden can't tolerate the guf. So, all leading to our question: How's it possible that the gilui then will be and shamas begufim dafke? Notwithstanding, the question is so even stronger that we got that Ilam Haba and Ilam Atchi is the mighty even though it's going to be incomparably higher than Gan Eden Shalach and Gam Bava Sumesh Rabbeinu Sheshim Kvar Gan Eden Kisim Megivim Allah Mishana. Therefore, what's the raya that it's higher than Gan Eden? Because the others of Moshe Rabbeinu are sitting in Gan Eden more than 3,000 years, and every day having an aliyah, they're going to be punished to come into the guf. No, because it's even higher. They have to come into a guf. So it's Elam Atchi is even higher than Elam Haba. Then Gan Eden, if in Gan Eden the guf is not tolerated, how can the guf be tolerated then? Not only is it tolerated, but the guf is nanim. Continue more detail in that Beis Hashem tomorrow.